and welcome to CCTV News. I'm Jung Jin in Beijing. Libyan rebels are continuing to battle forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi in Zawiya. The strategic city lies just west of Tripoli, where rebels have made their most significant advance in months. Opposition fighters launched their latest offensive from mountains in the country's far west in an attempt to break the stalemate that has persisted for months. A rebel force advancing from the south reached a bridge on Zawiya's southwestern outskirts, while some fighters pushed farther into the city's central main square. The residents of Zawiya rose up against the government after the unrest first began in February. But Gaddafi's forces retaliated and crushed any opposition in the city in a long and bloody siege in March. A Libyan government spokesman said on Saturday that Gaddafi's forces were in full control of Zawiya.
We believe the group inside the Zawiya is less than 50. The group that tried to attack Zawiya is less than 100. The group from outside Zawiya was defeated. The group inside the Zawiya, we are still dealing with them because, of course, they are escaping into streets and the flats and everywhere. But we have total control of the city.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will submit an application for full UN membership at the General Assembly next month. As peace talks with Israel remain deadlocked, Abbas hopes to win UN endorsement for Palestinian statehood in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza Strip. Tyrone has the details.
Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Malki announced on Saturday that President Mahmoud Abbas will approach the UN to seek full membership of an independent Palestinian state on September 20th to boost the principle of the two-state solution.
We want the request to be submitted during September for a simple reason, which is that Lebanon has the Security Council in September. And the role of the head of the Security Council will be a major and significant role.
Meanwhile, the foreign minister said that the Palestinian leadership had chosen September to approach the UN because it coincides with the Lebanon's turn to chair the international organization. Asked about the possibility that the U.S. may demand the UN to postpone the Palestinian request, al-Malki said the scenario could repeat itself as it has done in the past, and that the decision will be left to Lebanon and the member states. In a separate move, Palestinians have signaled they will seek an upgrading of their status from observer entity to non-member state. This is expected to pass as it does not require Security Council approval. This year's 66th General Assembly meetings are set to open officially on September 13th. High-level meetings among world leaders are expected to start on September 20th. Though the UN vote is largely symbolic, the Palestinians believe it will send a powerful message to Israel. Chairong, CCTV.
Israel and the U.S. have strongly opposed the Palestinians' plan, saying statehood should only be achieved through negotiations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement expressing regret at the move. The United States, which holds veto power in the UN Security Council, is expected to oppose any bid by Abbas to seek a unilateral UN mandate for statehood in the absence of peace talks with Israel. Now moving on, thousands of Israelis have poured into the streets across the country to protest against high living costs. Saturday's demonstrations, which spread to outlying areas, marks the fourth week of unrest. The largest demonstration occurred in Haifa in northern Israel. Protesters say they can no longer afford to buy or rent apartments. The first major demonstration broke out in late July after thousands marched against rising home prices. In less than a month, the movement ballooned from a few tents in Tel Aviv to nationwide protests. Police in Birmingham have arrested 5 suspects between the ages of 16 and 28 on suspicion of murdering 3 men during riots earlier this week. All 5 are from the Birmingham area, where local residents gathered to offer support to the victims' families. Su Ting has more.
This is the scene of the tragedy where 3 victims of Pakistani origin were killed during riots in Birmingham earlier this week. Members of the South Asian community gathered here to show their solidarity towards the grieving families. The 3 victims were hit by a car as they attempted to protect a petrol station and nearby stores. Their relatives joined a police appeal for more information. Tariq Jaham, whose son was one of the 3 men killed, said he was overwhelmed by the messages he received after his son's death. Jaham has been praised by many people for appealing for calm after his son was killed.
Everyone in this country for the kind words of condolences that I've received. I've received so much mail internationally as well from everyone. I'm humbled by the response from everyone.
Police said that 5 men are in custody in connection to the murder. Although the suspects came from all of Britain's ethnic communities, the violence has stirred fears of heightened racial tensions in Birmingham.
We've recovered over 400 exhibits. The response from the community has been absolutely overwhelming. Immediately after the incident, a number of witnesses came forward, and to date we have obtained over 70 witness statements from people who have provided vital information and evidence in relation to the incident.
Across the country, more than 1,700 people have been arrested and charged with violence, disorder and looting. Courts in London, Birmingham and Manchester have stayed open around the clock to deal with the floods of suspects. Su Yuting, CCTV.
The UK government says the country needs to tackle deep-seated social problems following riots this week. Touring an area of Manchester hit by the recent riots, Britain Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg says it is right to seek advice from the former police chief of New York and Los Angeles, William Bratton.
Of course, there are longer-term questions. Why is it that you've seen young kids going out looting like this? Why do these people appear to have no sense of responsibility, no sense of connection or loyalty towards their own society? Those are bigger, long-term questions which we'll have to debate in the weeks and months ahead. And I think it's good that we get as many people involved in that debate as possible.
In the U.S., Philadelphia police officials have been working to curb ongoing youth violence in the streets of the city by introducing 9 p.m. curfews. The curfew is in effect for young people aged 18 and under in 2 areas of the city. Officials say it's part of an effort by Philadelphia's city administration to deal with unrest on the streets at night. The police presence in the city has been increased significantly. Philadelphia police say the troublemakers only represent a small percentage of people and they will detain those causing problems. The city is also keeping recreational centers open until 10 p.m. to provide an alternative to late-night street activity that could lead to violence or other crimes. The Indonesian government has raised the alert status of Mount Papandayan in Garut, West Java province to level 3. Local authorities have advised all tourists and locals to stay outside a 2-kilometer radius from the volcano's craters. The craters are tourist attractions but are now emitting dangerous hydrogen sulfide and carbon monoxide gases. Residents were also advised to remain calm and await further notice from the relevant authorities. Mount Papandayan is one of Indonesia's most popular peaks to climb. It last erupted in 2002. Now turning to East Africa, where millions of people are affected by the worst drought in decades. More famine victims are in need of life-saving help. Our correspondent Danielle Renches has a story.
12.4 million people are vulnerable in the Horn of Africa nations of Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti and Somalia.
What is happening in the Horn of Africa is the most severe humanitarian emergency in the world today, and the worst that East Africa has seen in several decades.
Despite the US government's contributing $580 million this year, only about half of the UN's $2.5 billion goal has been reached internationally. Economic problems in the US and Europe have not helped and have also diverted media attention away from Africa.
Over the last week or 10 days, I think we're noticing a bit of a shift where people are saying, now wait a second, yes, we have the debt crisis, yes, we have all these other problems, but look, this is a famine. People are dying. This is something that we normally respond to.
The UN and Western aid agencies have had very little access to central and southern Somalia, controlled by the militant group Al-Shabaab.
The United States has loosened restrictions, made it easier for aid groups to work in areas controlled by Al-Shabaab, the Islamist insurgency. However, there still remains the question of security and whether Al-Shabaab will let international relief organizations have access to the populations in those areas.
Recently, pro-government forces have succeeded in expelling al-Shabaab from the capital, Mogadishu, enabling aid groups to operate there. The US has also been indirectly involved in the security environment.
The US provides financial assistance to the African Union, which has fielded the peacekeepers primarily from Burundi and Uganda. The African Union's taken some of this money and turned it around and hired U.S. private security contractors to help train and equip the African Union peacekeeping contingent.
Western aid agencies say Somali and Islamic aid organizations abroad are more effective at distributing aid in war-torn areas of the country.
Somali diaspora at large, they're doing the best that they can. But this is the first time that we were able to do collective work and mobilize the community in large throughout the United States.
Somali refugees are also flocking to camps in Kenya, Ethiopia and Djibouti, nations which are also themselves dealing with unfolding crises. Here, Western aid agencies are able to operate more effectively. Aid agencies say much more is needed from the international community, from the private sector and from the public, fearing hundreds of thousands may die in the Horn of Africa. Daniel Renches, CCTV, Washington.
It has been an emotional day in Berlin as tens of thousands of people gathered to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the construction of the Berlin Wall. German leaders, including President Christian Wulff and Chancellor Angela Merkel, along with thousands of citizens, attended a ceremony in the country's capital, which included a memorial service. The German leaders lay wreath at the memorial site and held a minute of silence before the national anthem erupted from the crowds. Now, about 140 people were killed and 75,000 imprisoned while trying to cross over from east to west Berlin. 50 years ago, the Berlin Wall went up, dividing not only the city and Germany, but also hundreds of families, friends, and relatives. For one photographer who shot the first picture documenting the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961, it was a special feeling for him to visit the wall 50 years later. Mike Weber has the story.
Brick by brick, the wall went up on August 13, 1961. It separated West Berlin from East Berlin, as well as dividing the country. 50 years after his pictures of the construction of the Berlin Wall were published around the world, former photographer Peter Hillebrecht slowly walks along a cobblestone street that once divided the German capital. Facing the Brandenburg Gate, Peter casts his mind back to that night 50 years ago.
I remember that the GDR battle group stood here in front of the Brandenburg Gate with their water cannons. We provoked them until they sprayed us with water, and we got good pictures.
Germany had been divided into two parts after the end of World War II. That split pitted the nation at the forefront of the Cold War for nearly 30 years. The division ended on November 9, 1989, after East Germany opened the Berlin Wall. And today, although the former wall is one of Berlin's biggest tourist draws, the attractions relevant to the structure are difficult to find. It is not just foreign visitors who struggle to figure out where the barrier once stood. A young generation of Berlin residents have hardly any reminders of their cities and nations' once defining barrier.
Only someone who knows the past can face the future. We all want to be able to deal with our future. That's why we have to know our past.
The entire wall ran some 40 kilometers through the city 50 years ago. But now, only a fraction remains standing, a cobblestone line that stretches down streets and across roads through the heart of the city reminds passers-by where the historic wall once stood. Mike Weber, CCTV.
Muslim devotees in the eastern Indian state of Bihar prefer to break their fast by drinking special Kashmiri tea or shirti during the holy month of Ramadan. Paul Crow has more.
Muslim devotees fasting during the holy month of Ramadan in India's eastern Bihar state prefer to break their fast by drinking special Kashmiri tea or shirti, which has gained popularity as it's only served during this sacred month. Ramadan, the 9th month of the Hijri lunar calendar, honours the revelation of the Holy Quran to the Prophet Muhammad and has traditionally been a time of religious fervour. During this month, Muslims do not consume food or water from dawn to dusk. They eat a small pre-dawn meal called seri, and at dusk they break the day-long fast with the evening meal called iftar. A large number of Muslims prefer to break their iftar with shir tea rather than water.